Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Lazy Hypnotherapist. I, as always, am your host, Lily. I'm a certified hypnotherapist and a trainer of conversational hypnosis. And I teach other practitioners, therapists, coaches, how to utilize the revolutionary technique of conversational hypnosis to create deep, long-lasting change for their clients. So whether you are watching on YouTube, because I've finally decided to get back up on YouTube, or Spotify or Apple, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited to get into today's topic because it's something that I have worked on in myself in the past, and it's something that I help a lot of clients with. So I think it's something that is really relatable for a lot of people, and that is our emotional patterns and how we often find ourselves in very, very, very similar situations a lot of the time until we infiltrate the pattern and are actually able to break it. But I think probably everyone at some point or another has had that thought of, how do I keep ending up in this same situation? Maybe it's a relationship. How do I keep ending up in the same type of relationship? Different person, but same themes, same feelings, the same argument, maybe with your partner. How do we keep ending up in this exact same place? The same anxiety, which all kind of ties into it anyway, the same self-doubt, rejection, the same themes in your life keep popping up, even though those circumstances on the outside look different. It's the same feelings and the same emotional experience. And the way that I always describe it is that it's not that the subconscious isn't just creating behaviors, it's creating feelings, emotions, and it's creating patterns out of them. And I think when people think about patterns or habits, they think about specific actions. So maybe, a big one I work with in my practice is binge eating or emotional eating or overeating. Procrastination is a really big one. Reassurance checking, avoiding. I guess you think about actions, but really what's happening is that there's been an emotional pattern, an emotional undercurrent that's been running the show, and kind of the behavior is the way that the emotions express themselves. It has much more to do with the emotional pattern than it does with the behavior, even though it feels like the behavior is the big problem. And that's something that I focus on a lot in my sessions, is that the presenting problem or the symptom is very rarely actually the problem that needs addressing. It's that deeper underlying undercurrent of emotional patterning and beliefs. And the behavior will only change once we get to the emotional pattern underneath it. And if we don't, or if we just deal with the symptoms, this is what I say to a lot of my clients, if we just deal with the symptoms, it's kind of like we're just band-aiding it, or we allow the emotional pattern to express itself in different symptoms. So what we want to be doing is really getting to the core of it and dealing with the emotional pattern so that it doesn't come up in other funky ways for, other funky behaviors, because we want to deal with really the root of it. But I find this topic so fascinating, how we can be in a completely different situation, but the feelings, the experience, it takes us back and we feel like we're in the exact same position, but it's just expressing itself slightly differently. And one one thing that I always point out is that the subconscious mind's primary job is, of course, to keep us safe. That's like all the subconscious mind cares about, which is, like, when you think about it, is so sweet and so beautiful, but it causes a lot of destruction, because the subconscious mind just doesn't define safety in the way that we do in our life now. To the subconscious, familiar equals safety. Even if familiar is anxiety, disappointment, toxic people, stress, whatever it is, if that's familiar, our subconscious mind goes, oh, that's safe, because we know it. Which is so wild, because of course, stress, disappointment, rejection, whatever it is, does not keep us safe. But if it feels familiar, our mind goes, oh yeah, that's safety. And that's why, maybe someone who grew up in an environment where they had to like earn love, they might unconsciously, subconsciously seek relationships where they have to prove themselves. And it's not because they enjoy it. Sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. She is having a big old drink of water. Thirsty gal. But yeah, it's not because they enjoy it. It's because it's familiar. It's because it's what they know. It's like the path that they've taken every day. They know where to go. They know what it looks like. They know what to expect. Even if what to expect is pain and heartache and all these awful feelings, it's familiar. It's like an emotional landscape that their subconscious remembers. And I think once we can really begin to understand this, we can really begin to make change, which is always the goal and what is so exciting. And one of the ways that I explain this to my clients is that the subconscious it's like it's constantly making predictions. It's like it's betting. It's saying, what usually happens here when we're in a relationship, when we're choosing a partner, or when we're at work or whatever, what usually happens here? What could we expect? If this situation looks similar to something we've experienced before, so a partner, a workplace, particular environment, how do we respond? What do we usually do? What do we usually experience? And the problem is that the subconscious doesn't always distinguish the past from the present. If a situation feels slightly familiar, it often just activates that same response. And it's kind of also why like two people can experience the same situation but have completely different emotional responses to it based on their past, their conditioning, the family they grew up in, the relationships that they've experienced. Their emotional response is going to be so much different from one another based on their own internal world. And it's like the subconscious is comparing two different worlds, which it is. And I think it also comes down to identity. Identity is a really big one for us as human beings. We like to be categorized, and we like to, I suppose, confirm and align with the identity that has either been created for us or that we've created for ourselves, or the identity that we are familiar with, which often comes down to the stories that we tell ourselves based on maybe stories that other people have told us about ourselves. It comes to things like, I'm the anxious one, or I'm just like an anxious person, or I'm always the second choice. I'm always the one that gets left. I'm not confident. I'm shy. I don't like to speak in front of people. I always have to work harder than everyone else to get to where they easily go. It's these assumptions, these identity markers that we have that make us align and live our lives in correlation with it, because it's easier for us. It's not actually easier for us, but it's easier for our mind to have an identity to follow. And they're predictions, they're assumptions. The subconscious starts to look for evidence that these statements are actually true, not because it wants you to suffer. Like, your subconscious is always on your side. It never ever wants you to suffer or feel bad. It's because it thinks that means that you're safe. If it's consistent and it's familiar and it aligns with what you know, then it's easier for you. It's less pain because you can predict it, less uncertainties, and your mind just loves to go there. It loves to create the same patterns. And that's why people can understand their patterns, but still repeat them. You can understand your patterning and still not have made change to it. And that's a big thing that I see with my clients, is that they'll often tell me, I've been in therapy for years. I know my patterns. I know why I do the things I do. I know why I am the way I am, but I can't seem to change it. You can explain it perfectly, but the subconscious, it changes through new experiences, new meanings, new emotional learnings. It doesn't change through just insight alone. And that's one of the reasons that I obviously love conversational hypnosis so much, because instead of asking, why does this happen, we're also asking, what does your subconscious mind expect to happen? We're looking for the emotional payoffs. What emotional rule has your subconscious been following? What belief is keeping this pattern alive? I love that one. What belief is keeping this pattern alive? And when those unconscious expectations begin to change, the predictions begin to change, new perspectives and understandings are brought in on that deep emotional level, the emotional pattern can change. And it's not through force, or because someone is forcing themselves to react differently, but because those old feelings don't feel as necessary. They don't feel as familiar. They don't feel as needed for safety, if that makes sense. And I think one of the most freeing and liberating things that people can realize is, if you keep repeating the same emotional pattern, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that you haven't learned anything or you don't understand yourself. It usually just means your subconscious is running an old prediction based on your past experience. And a lot of that in, our past experiences, our conditioning, our beliefs, we never really necessarily had a choice in it. It's just something that we came to believe. And the best thing about this is that these predictions can be updated. The subconscious, the best thing about it is that it can learn. And it can create new predictions and new expectations for your world. And then you start to look for things differently. You start to look to confirm this new world, this new identity that you have been able to create for yourself. And when that happens, you just start behaving differently. You begin experiencing life differently. I always say to my clients, the change happens so subtly. Maybe a week has passed and you'll just kind of reflect and go, oh yeah, usually when I would have done this, I did this instead. And usually when I would have responded in this way, I for some reason responded in this way. Some reason I just felt inspired to do this. And it's these really subtle changes. Or, when it comes to maybe it's a toxic relationship or something, it's yeah, I just sort of suddenly realized that that's actually just not okay. And those old behaviors, I actually don't really want to do anymore. And so it's really subtle, really, really subtle, but so powerful. And so if you're, someone listening to this and you're thinking, this is exactly me. This is, I've always had these thoughts of, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep ending up in the same situations? I want you to stop blaming yourself. One, I really do. And I want you to know that this can absolutely be transformed. And, it all comes through that work with the subconscious. So if you're someone that's wanting to work on this, please reach out, book in a free discovery call in the description below. It's so possible for everybody, which is so exciting. And if you're a practitioner listening to this and you're like, I have so many clients that keep getting in the same emotional patterns and they understand it, but they just can't get there, you can learn conversational hypnosis with me. You can start learning straight away, and you can start implementing this into your practice and help them truly, once and for all, get out of these emotional patterns. So that's it from me today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And I can't wait for the next episode. Okay, bye.